I could either, play a victim for the rest of my life. I could move. I mean, I could have sold the house, moved away, but I still never would have dealt with any of it.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Solid. We're excited to have you with us today. We've got a special guest, Derick Legg from the Derick Legg podcast has joined us today. If you haven't checked out his podcast, make sure you do. He's had some incredible guests over the last couple of years and has just done a really good job with that. But we discussed today everything from a little bit of bear hunting to just his childhood growing up, what he's done to start his businesses. He's got a great story, and it was a great discussion today, wasn't it?
Yeah, dude, I think it was awesome. So many of you guys are going to get so much from today, from just how to persevere, how to respond during times that are tough, and then how to take some risks to be successful in business, and really just how to improve your relationships and some things that we can do to improve our life in all areas. Man, he gave us so many tips. So thanks for coming on today, Derick.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. So if you would, be sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you comment as well. Let us know what you'd like to see more of. We do have our Solid 30 challenge starting here. In fact, when this comes out, this will come out probably, we actually might have started by the time this comes out. June 1st is when we're going to start it. So excited about that. And you'll hear more details about that on the podcast before this one. So tune into that. And thanks again for plugging in. We appreciate your support. We'll also have hats, shirts, swag that we're going to have available on our website here soon. A lot of you have been asking about how to get some of that. So we are working on it. We'll get it out to you. Thanks, guys.
Well, so you've done the grizzly. So we're just doing black bears, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, they're like deer. Like they're so skittish.
Yeah.
And so, and they're just look like big dogs walking around.
Yeah, they do.
So they were like, hey, we're just dropping you off and we'll be within an hour doing other baits. So if you get one, just text us bear down. And I'm like, well, hold on. Like, I'm just here alone. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, where am I? And they're like, oh, we're going to cut some sticks down and put you right there and we'll stack some sticks in front of you.
On the ground, yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know.
It's awesome.
Your first time, you're going, dude, am I going to get eaten?
I know.
Is he going to come up behind me?
Yeah. You said you saw a wolf last time?
So we have a wolf tag, but we never saw one.
Yeah. It's pretty rare to see a wolf.
That would be cool.
They shot one a week before we got there last year.
Did they?
One of the guides went out and got one.
Yeah.
But it was like all mangy and it had been raining and snowing. And
That's the bad part about spring is it's hard to get one with good fur.
Well, and I thought like first day I'm not shooting. Like that was my goal. I'm not going to shoot first day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I get out there and the first one comes in. So I'm like looking at the bait, right? And it comes in through the trees and I can see it the whole time. I can hear it, everything, right? And it turns and goes up to the bait. And I was like, man, those things are pretty, like, they're not that big.
Yeah.
Not as big as I thought they would be.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that's the one that tipped the barrel over and started eating.
Yeah.
Second one came in just a little off of that, about same size. And I was like, I just hope I shoot a big boy,
Sure.
Because they're giving everyone shit about shooting sows.
Yep.
You know? And then another one had kind of poked its head in past the trees, and I never really got a good look at it. And then I started hearing something coming in behind me. And so I'm like looking over my shoulder, like trying not to move too much. And here comes this big boar coming up the 4-wheeler trail behind me. And I'm just watching him. And so I've got a video I'll show you guys. But I pulled my phone up and he's like, he's right there. And I'm just like, got this video up. He's 10 feet from me.
Yeah.
And he kind of stops and like looks over. And then he takes like a step and then he like hops back. And like, I just didn't move. And then I guess he figured I was no threat. He knew I was there.
Sure.
And then he just went by me, went up, pulled the pig head out of the tree, ate it, laid on this like stack of meat on the ground, just shoveling it in his face. And then I was like, once he got up there, I was like, dude, he's way bigger than the other two that came in. And so I was like, man, I don't want to shoot first day, but this thing looks pretty big.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when it started coming back to me as it was leaving, I just had the scope on him. And it's funny, I'm shooting like a 300 Win Mag at like 20 yards.
Point blank, yeah.
And he like, right as he turns, I just shot him and he just dropped. Boom.
Yeah.
Right there. Didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And then even when I walked up on him, I'm like, oh crap, he might be kind of small.
Yeah. Where'd you get him at? Where'd you shoot him at?
So I double lunged him. So right when he turned broadside, I shot him. And he turned out to be 6'9".
Yeah.
They measured
Good
him.
bear.
So I felt pretty good. Well, the guide got there and I'm like, is this one like good size? And he's like, oh, that's a good one. You're at least 6.5. You're at least 6.5. So I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
So I felt good about it.
Happened to me. I think the first time I went up there was 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. Same thing. First night, I'm like, I don't want to shoot something first night.
Yeah.
and I was in a tree stand, and just dead quiet. You know how they can just come in, you don't hear them. Like the one, so it was this one right here that's on the, so he's a good bear. But he came in, and I remember I just started shaking. Like, I was so excited. You know,
was that your first one?
Yeah. And he comes in, starts eating. So I draw back, whack, like hit him. And then what they do is they'll run away. So we hit him with a bow. They'll run, and he ran probably 10, 15 yards. And then they do this like, they call it a death moan, right?
Moan, yeah.
Yeah. And he was dead. Like, I could see him right there. Like, he didn't go hardly anywhere.
Yeah.
And it was crazy.
Yeah,
I was shaking
such
so
a
bad.
rush, man.
I got a video of it somewhere. It was back when we had old video cameras, you know. And that's really cool.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
Dude.
Have you done it?
I haven't.
Oh,
I've never been
you
bear
gotta do
hunting.
it, dude.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It'd be a good
for
one
sure.
to do with like your kid, you know,
Yeah.
or kids, because you have a good night's rest, great food, great lodging. You go out in the afternoons, and then you hunt till like 11 o'clock at night because it stays light so long.
That's what's a trip.
Yeah.
You're out there till 11. You get back like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And then it's like light at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the further north you go that time of year. Just,
Yeah. What drove me crazy is you'd get home at night, eat dinner, then you wake up the next morning, eat breakfast.
Yeah.
I hate that. Like, that's the only part I don't like is eating so much. I guess you don't have to
feeding
eat
you all the time.
but you just feel like you just ate dinner, and like 5 hours later you're
Right.
eating breakfast again. Yeah. But it's so fun. It's
That's
cool.
awesome.
When we went, I was sick. And so it's like COVID lockdown, everything, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like going through the airport, and they check you in and whatnot. And they're like looking at my passport, and they're asking me questions, and I had no voice.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we're good. And I'm like, I'm definitely getting quarantined.
They arrest you up there. Dude, you're staying here for 2 weeks.
So I was like trying not to talk as much as I could, and they let me through. But so I had NyQuil, those little NyQuil packet gel pill things.
Yep.
And I don't take a lot of meds.
Yeah.
And so the first night I took one of those, my throat was jacked and everything. And I slept for like 14 hours.
Oh, dang.
And so every night I took one of those. I woke up.
I
woke up at like noon every day.
Yeah. And you're ready to go. 2-3 hours later,
like,
you're heading to the stand.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I might take some this year just so I could sleep, man.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's a cool family up there too. Jarvises are awesome people.
So cool.
They're
I've been
way cool
texting
people.
Hunter trying to get him to set me up on the biggest bear out there.
Yeah. Good. Have them hook you up.
Yeah. So I got my grandpa, dude. So we can't do a ton of hiking, but so get me on. I want something cinnamon and big. So
yeah,
Has your grandpa
colored.
been before?
Never. So he grew up hunting.
Okay.
Grew up in Wyoming, elk, deer, all of that.
Yeah.
They owned hundreds of acres. Well, the generation before him did.
Yeah.
And so he's been terrified of bears his whole life.
Wow.
And I found out last night. So I'm showing him pictures of last year. Mm-hmm. And my grandma's like, well, he's scared of bears. And I'm like, well, he keeps saying that, but it's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. And he's like John Wayne, Western cowboy, funny guy. And he says, he's like, well, the reason I'm scared is because when I was a kid, I'd go down to the creek and I'd sneak down there and play in the water and stuff. My parents would get mad at me. Mm-hmm. And so one day they told me they saw a big bear down there. And if I go down there alone, the bear will eat me. Mm-hmm. So that's how they kept him away from the water.
Yeah.
So his whole life he's been terrified of bears.
That's funny. Rome has always been scared of bears. I think as he's been hunting with us the last couple of years, he's not so much. But when he was young, he was like 4 or 5. We were in California, and someone that we knew there had sent us a video of the night before of a bear hopping their fence and getting in their backyard. And he just could not get it out of his mind that bear was in someone's backyard,
Yeah.
And so he was scared in Vegas. I'm like, dude, there's no bears in Vegas. Like, you don't have to worry. He's still worried about bears all the time,
Only place I've been nervous about bears is like Wyoming, because the grizzlies up there, they're not afraid of you. In fact, when they hear a gunshot, that's like a dinner bell. So they'll hear a gunshot and go to the
because
gunshot.
they're protected, right?
Well, no, because they figure something's dead.
Okay.
So as soon as they hear that rifle shot, they figure, there's an elk down or deer down, and they start heading that way.
Not enough of a mid-shot or what? I mean, because they're pretty smart. They learn.
No, they don't you can't hunt them in Wyoming. It's illegal.
Okay, so that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're protected.
They're protected. Okay, yeah. So yes,
Yeah.
they're protected. So they don't have a healthy fear of humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, and there's several stories every year of people getting eaten.
Oh, yeah. I think, last year that dude went viral, right? That bear that attacked him, he ended up living. Filmed the whole thing.
Ripped his face off.
Yeah. Like, what a stud for... I mean, who thinks to pull out their phone and film it at that time, I got to film this.
That's how we live now, man. We live through the screen.
I know.
It's crazy, man. I don't know.
I
I
never
never,
for worse.
I never think that way, but I watch these videos, and that's always my thought. Is like, who's filming this, or what made them think I should film this?
Well, it's like that one I have of that bear. The bear ended up shooting right next to me. You can see my rifle laying across my lap. Yeah. And I'm like this on my phone, and everyone's like, you dumbass. Like, you don't even pick the gun up.
I was shooting him just a different way, shooting him with a camera instead of a...
I was like, I don't know. I just didn't, wasn't scared of it.
Yeah, I know.
I probably should have been, but I wasn't.
It's funny. It's like Brian Mayman and I were up hunting, and I was filming with him, and he had the bow, and so we were walking in on a bait, actually, and there was a bear that was just like territorial, and he was mad, right? He'd kind of like bluff charge us, and we were just kind of watching him, having fun with him. And Brian didn't want to shoot him. He was a good bear, but not like a huge bear. But he ended up having to shoot him because in fact, I was like holding the camera like this, getting a selfie with him and me. And then he shoots it, right? Like it was pretty cool. Like it was all on there. But I mean, same thing. I wasn't scared, even though we were within 10 yards of a bear, you know, that was like
an angry bear
chomping his jaws at us, you know.
Slapping
but
the ground.
I mean, Brian had his bow, and he could have let him have it, you know, anytime.
His bow. See, my grandpa's, I'm like, Grandpa, I have a gun. I'm like, we're going to be fine. I have a gun. He's like, you better be a good shot, boy, because I can't outrun you.
That's funny.
And he's 80.
He's 80.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and he was a builder. Like, he built the HPC hospital building here. Years ago, he built the seminary building for the college.
Okay, yeah.
But he went up to Rexburg when BYU took over Rick's, I think is what it's called, right?
Uh-huh.
When they made that transition, he was with Jacobson Construction, and they took him up there. So he built like the 3 new buildings that are at BYUI, the Hinckley building, the temple, the Rexburg temple. He was the super on that. And then he retired from Jacobson, and some guys that had left Jacobson started their own, picked him back up, and then he built a ton of the student housing up there in Rexburg. So he's just made a life up in Manan is what it's called, but right outside of Rexburg.
Cool.
Kelsey has a lot of family from up in that area.
Yeah.
Multiple generations.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
He's got 5 acres on the river. And he's a builder, so he has a beautiful house, beautiful shop.
Yeah, it's just always windy.
It is windy up there.
Always.
Yeah.
It never stops blowing.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the only problem. It is beautiful, but it just never stops blowing, man.
Yeah.
Especially when it's cold and windy.
Yeah.
Have you ever spent a lot of time in that area?
I don't want to be up there when it's cold.
Seriously, the wind never stops. It just always is windy. It's weird, but it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Kelsey's family probably 4 or 5 generations.
Really?
In that area, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were just talking about it actually the other week because my family, I didn't know my family's my mom's side of the family has been in southern Utah for 4 or 5 generations since the 1800s, and I didn't realize that. So we were just learning. And then, of course, Kelsey was telling her grandma, and her grandma starts telling her about, it's kind of crazy how
all
we
the
learn
history.
Those things. Yeah.
Are you from here? Is this where you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I moved here when I was 6.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
We're all born in Salt Lake, me and all my siblings. And then my parents actually grew up here. So they went to Dixie High and met at Dixie High, and then got married. Went to Salt Lake, got married, and then they kind of worked their way back down. So like Salt Lake, Cedar City, St. George, and then the Washington house that we lived in, and raised all the kids there.
Awesome. Okay.
And then I took that house over when my parents split up. So I lived in that Washington house till we just built our new house 2 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
But
good deal.
How are you liking that house? Last time we were talking, I think you just moved in.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I drew it.
Yeah.
So like it's everything I'd ever wanted.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
It's way too much. I mean, it's me, my wife, and a 2-year-old. And like the downstairs is like half unfinished. And like, I wouldn't even go downstairs.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason to. Like everything we have is upstairs.
Yeah.
But I need speakers, and I'll have my theater room finished.
Awesome.
And so I'm just waiting on the speakers to come, and then I'll probably start going down there then.
Yeah.
And then the vault room, it's getting close. I just need to get my door up.
Cool.
So.
Well, you know a guy who can get you the door.
I've had the
Yeah, do you have any connections for that?
The door's been in there for 3 years.
Oh, dang.
When we poured the flat work and they put the walls up, right when they started sheeting the flooring for the upstairs, we took the door in, and it's because that's the only time I could get it in.
Yeah.
And so we craned it down, and it's been sitting in that room since.
Wow.
So it's big. It was a one-off that Fort Knox did for a show. And so it's like stainless steel. They've like brushed it all stainless steel.
Oh, awesome.
It's like 2,000 pounds. It's a beast. So,
and then just cinder block walls. Is that what you did?
Cement.
Cement.
So we have
Okay.
8-inch cement
You just
walls.
did panels.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then so it's like under the 3rd-car garage is the vault.
Okay.
And then under the 2-car garage is the theater.
Cool.
And so even the theater is like 8-inch walls, cement all the way around it. So
How big's the vault?
it's like 900 square feet.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's way bigger than I thought
man
it would
cave.
be. Yeah, I mean, there's a bathroom in there. I mean, it's smaller than this, but like I got a bathroom and I'll have like couches and
That's cool.
TVs and
So you can open it from the inside if you need to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So you can use it as a panic. So we have like automation through the house too.
Yeah.
and then the cameras, security, all that.
Yep.
It's all plumbed into there.
Really cool.
Awesome.
So like the home run will be in the vault room. So
Okay.
I could lock the whole house down
Yep.
and lock us in.
Yeah.
And then like we have food storage in there already when I get the bathroom done. So like we could live in there
Yeah.
if we had to.
Only way to get in there, jackhammer and a bunch of hours.
Yeah, and you're
of
taking
work.
some bullets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or start the house on fire.
Well, it's cement.
Yeah. Even the top.
I mean, it might
even
just
the top
cook
floor.
us. Well, it's prefabbed.
Oh, it is.
cement that
Okay.
they'll bring
that's-
in.
So even if there was a
Yeah.
fire,
Yeah,
you'd
even
be
if there's
safe.
a fire,
Might
down
get
there.
hot, I'd
Yeah.
imagine. But
Ventilated though. Yeah.
Yep, so we have fresh air, and there's also a mini split in there.
Oh, cool.
So it's
Keep it
all
cool.
climate controlled.
Yeah, or
That's
hot.
awesome.
Or, yeah. Good.
Yeah. So it'd be
yeah.
sweet when it's done.
That's awesome.
That's
man.
awesome.
Do some gun tables and like you've got over here. And
Yeah. Yeah, I got it.
maybe some of these through the years,
I
know,
how
start
you
filling it up.
Get a couple. Get a
dude, this is
couple bears. Man.
this is the way to set it up, man. You got everything you need. Like I don't even need to go in the house. Really, I can just live out here.
Do you ever go in the house?
No, I'm pretty much out here all the time.
Every time I show up, he's out here anyway.
Why would I go anywhere else? Why would I?
He goes
He's got
inside
some
to
food
eat.
in there.
Yeah, he goes inside to eat. That's
Yeah,
it.
get a little bit hungry. Yeah, if I want to kiss, I go in there. But other than that, yeah, I got a microwave. I got
We
a.
get you an air fryer in here, dude.
I know.
Yeah.
I would be set.
Seriously, you
Got
just
my
need a
bathroom.
little hot plate and cast iron pan.
I
dude.
know.
cut up his deer
Got
meat
my
right
steak.
here. And
Yeah,
I know. We got the table.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a good butcher table. This
this
would be
table's
great.
sweet, man. I took a picture because my wife's been trying to find something. Is this just cement?
Yeah, I got it at it's a place called in Washington. Well, it used to be in Washington. Maybe it's not there
Down
anymore.
east?
Down east.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did like a built-in banquet seating in our dining, but like we did it. I mean, we wanted to go to here. We wanted to go to here.
Yeah.
Well, it ended up being like the table needs to be like 6 by 11.
Oh, it's
And
hard
so
to
it's some
find a
goo.
table.
Like we've never found one.
yeah,
like
just
not
do
even.
a concrete form. Man.
So I think that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Cool.
I thought they would be heavier than this. I mean,
It's
you can
heavy.
Move it though.
You can move it.
it is heavy.
But it
yeah.
is heavy.
Because I traded the guys over at Carpet Plus, and I was going to trade them a slab and just
Okay.
do a table out of like a cool slab of
Yeah.
whatever stone, right?
Yep.
And then I had a buddy that was going to weld up all the legs and everything for me. Well, then I started thinking about it. I'm like, this is going to be like an 1,800-pound table.
Yeah.
And so I was like, maybe we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
1-ton table.
Yeah, so then we punted it. So now, honestly, like we have a folding table in our dining room for 2 years.
Do what you
Whatever.
got to do while
Can't
you're
find a
figuring it
freaking
out.
table.
Yeah.
So how did you get the idea to start your podcast? Because you've had your podcast for how long now?
We're close to 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we started about a year after you started.
Yep.
Then is that okay?
Yep.
Cool.
The whole thing was, I mean, like honestly, I've always been blessed to have a job. I've always been blessed to make money,
Yep.
right? I've worked my trash off, but I've always had the opportunities. And Amanda and I were getting to the point where like we kind of had extra cash. And so I knew I could fund it. But I'm terrified of like being in front of people. So, and it was also like a fear thing I kind of wanted to get over.
Yeah.
Get out of my comfort zone, as cliche as that sounds, but this was a cool medium to, sit down with you guys and then maybe a couple thousand people see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So that was kind of my start. I didn't know if we were going to go like 2 months and bag it. Like I didn't know. And I was on Jefferson Rogers' podcast. You guys know him.
Yep.
And that's how I met Mallory. And I was like, hey, I need you. So do you know
Yes.
someone like you that I could pay and I'll do this?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of little things. I had buddies. I talk a lot.
Yeah.
So my buddies are like, dude, you should start a podcast, bring some people on, do some business stuff. But I wanted it to be more than business.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be people. I mean, that's why it's named the Derick Legg podcast, because it's not, there's no theme, And with my dad committing suicide. So that I wanted to try and help people with that.
How old were you when that happened?
So that was, it's actually Memorial Day weekend is when it happened. So
wow.
it's coming
It's
weekend,
coming up here. Okay.
It was only 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Very recently.
But we didn't have a relationship when it happened. When my parents split, I was the one at home with all the duct tape, trying to keep everything together, paying all the bills, trying to keep everyone's relationship. And it got to the point where I was just I was working 2 jobs and I was scared to leave the house because I didn't know if my dad was going to lose it and hurt someone or do something. Right. So it was every time I was on my way home, I would drive as fast as I could home because the anxiety started hitting me of what am I going to walk into?
Yeah.
He had attempted suicide multiple times. And so I was am I going to walk in and he's going to be dead?
Yeah.
Am I going to walk in and him and my mom are going to be getting into it? And so it kind of just got to the point where there was one big blow up at the house. I ended up walking in the middle of it and my mom left and him and I kind of got face to face. I'm 6'1", he was 5'8".
Yeah.
And I thought no doubt in my mind, I was he's going to swing on me.
Yeah.
And as we were sitting there face to face, and he's controlled all of us by fear. I think sometimes you can have a healthy fear of your dad, but it got to the point where it wasn't healthy anymore. Yeah. And we kind of just stood there face to face, and I thought he's going to swing on me. And I thought, man, if he swings on me, I hope he puts me down because I don't, there's no one here to get me off of him. And I was just stature. I was just a lot larger than my dad. So, but as we're sitting there looking at each other, which felt a half hour, and I'm sure it was 20 seconds, I saw his whole mentality just crumble, and his confidence was gone, his dominance was gone, everything just went away, and he almost turned into this scared kid. And then he took off running, and he went in his room, slammed the door. I called my 2 older brothers, and I'm hey, you guys got to get over here. I'm shaking now because all the adrenaline's going through me. And my oldest brother gets there, which is probably a bad idea because he's ex-military, little nutty. And he came in and saw me, and I'm shaking. And he was just where is he? And I was he's up in his room. And I honestly thought he was going to kill him. No joke. We had all been through so much. And I'm not exaggerating. So he went and got him. And my dad, and I'm getting pretty personal if it's too personal for you guys, but my dad was running from my brother. And luckily my other brother had shown up because he's the peacemaker. And he kind of separated them, you go over there, I'll talk to you. You go over there and calm down. And he kind of smoothed everything over for the day. But him and I kind of decided that my dad needs to go somewhere. He can't live here anymore. So he ended up going to Idaho with his family where they live in Boise area. So he lived up there, kind of bounced around from sibling to sibling. Again, the suicidal attempts was still going on up there. He ended up, and this is over 3 years. So that day when he left, I'd never talked to him again.
Wow.
I thought I had just started dating my now wife, and I was I got to move on. I can't keep doing this. And it was affecting me. It was affecting my jobs, my relationships, everything.
Yeah.
And I had to be the rock for my mom the entire time, And so I didn't realize it at the time, but I was shouldering a lot. And I ended up going maybe 4 or 5 months. And then Amanda and I had broke up, and everything came tumbling that night. And I'd heard of panic attacks. I'd heard about all this. Do we want to start, or are we going?
We're going, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we've been recording this whole time. So we're going to hear about bears. We're going to hear about whatever we talk.
It's dude, I just get going, man.
That's awesome.
Okay, now we just started.
So yeah, dude, that night I learned what a panic attack was, first person.
Yeah.
I was pacing around my house, trying to just kind of keep it together. Everything was just rushing, And I think part of it was that was the exact spot that me and my dad stood. And I thought that, and I kept walking by that, and it kept reminding me, and I was replaying and you know, like we had a hole in one of the doors that he had hit, and so I'd see that and I'd replay it. And I ended up in the corner of my bedroom. So I ended up taking my parents' house over. We moved my mom out to a townhome. I took the house over. I was just starting to rent rooms out to other people to help with the mortgage. And so I moved up to the master, and we actually had a folding plastic table out, like a lifetime table. And I struggled with anger issues my whole younger years.
Yeah.
Part of that because that was the example I had.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know any different. At the same time, like once I started learning, like this isn't normal.
Yeah.
You know, to just punch things.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I started trying to figure out how to curb that, and it's too bad that I kind of learned that in my 20s. But so anyway, I'm walking around and I'm just steaming, and I end up punching this plastic folding table, and I punched through it. And luckily I didn't hit metal, you know, because I would have just shattered my hand. And at that point I was like, okay, I just need to go sit down, or I'm going to lose it. And so then I went and I don't know why, I just ended up in the corner of the bedroom on my butt, my knees up to my chest, now I'm hyperventilating, you know, and I'm crying, shaking, and I can't feel my hands, you know, I'm just full on panic attack and anxiety attack, whatever you want to call it. And thankfully for my mom, she's always had some intuition about her kids, and she had no reason to call me that night. Right. And my phone rings and it's her. And so then I'm like trying to get it together, you know, and I'm like, hello. And she's like, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm doing good. You know, like trying to keep it together. And, she's like, do you need anything? And I was like, no, I'm all right. And she's like, all right, just calling to check on you. And she hangs up. Well, obviously she knows.
Yeah.
So she ended up calling my brother Adam, and they both came over to the house, and I didn't know they were coming. And I'm still sitting there in the corner crying.
Your brother's older than you?
Yeah. So I have 3 older brothers.
Okay.
A younger sister, 3 older brothers. So he ended up coming over, and he was like living his own life he had, I'm pretty sure he had 1 kid at the time, and he was married, starting to grow his business. And, but so he came over, and they walk in the house and find me in the room, just a mess, you know? And so they get me up, Adam hugs me, and he's like, dude, what's going on? And so I kind of break down, start telling him everything. And I'm like, dude, I think I've just had to be this solid person. Solid, right?
Yeah.
I've had to be this solid person from when I was 17 to 22. And I've never shown weakness. I've had to be the father of the house. I've had to be the man. When people needed stuff, they called me. And church callings, I was always like the highest in the church callings. Like at the time, I was over all the activities in a singles ward. So every Monday I was planning activities for 100 people and 50 to 100 people, and working 2 jobs, right? And so he says, well, dude, can we go to dinner? I want to take you to dinner. So we end up going to dinner and just kind of talking everything out, and it just let me just express everything, you know? And it was the only time because I always felt like I was complaining, and I was kind of like, this was the cards I was dealt, and I need to make the best out of it, right? Like when I was going through it, that was my mindset. Right. Like what's the alternative, you know? So yeah, crazy. I don't even know how we got onto that.
You wanted to be stoic, right?
Yeah.
And so you kept anybody from knowing anything that was going on inside. You just were holding it together the best you could, and eventually it catches up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of men go through that in maybe in different ways in their lives, but always, trying to hold it in rather than, I think one of the things you said is playing that movie in your mind. Do you feel like once you were able to express it, it kind of, is that the point you think you realized that movie that you were playing in the mind? Yeah.
Yeah. Because we ended up staying in I lived in that house for another 8 years.
Okay.
So I ended up marrying the girlfriend that broke up with me. Somehow I talked her into coming back. Still, everyone wonders how, but so I ended up marrying her. She moved in and we lived there.
Yeah.
But I think that it was kind of, again, I could either, play a victim for the rest of my life. I could I could have sold the house, moved away, but I still never would have dealt with any of it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't fault my dad. I wasn't even mad at him.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have hatred towards him. He lived a rough life. He worked multiple jobs to support all of us. He was a UPS driver, worked his butt off, sweating every day, coached all of our sports teams. Right. Yeah. I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
It just fell apart in my later teens.
Is your dad Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Legg. Remember Mike Legg?
I do.
You might not have been around.
I remember the name, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Legg.
Yep.
I never realized, never put two and two together until...
Well, my brother's Mike too. And so my oldest brother's Mike. And so people call and be like, is Mike there? I'm like, dad or brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's the police, it was my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, wow. So, I do think there's a lot of, all of us, we're always trying to hold it together, and be good men. So when all that kind of, I guess, broke open for you, was it an immediate, okay, I let all that out, it's a new life from here? Was it a process? Did you go to therapy? How did you heal?
Process for sure.
You're probably still healing. I mean, we're always, but yeah.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to even talk about it.
Yeah.
I went 4 years of paying my parents' house payment, car payment, or not car payments. I don't know if they had that, but insurance, cell phones.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And again, it was just the cards I was dealt. But so I was holding all that in from when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But once that, I kind of worked on it, never really talked about it. My mom had no idea I was even paying for everything. But it was definitely a process. And I think I'll kind of transition into this if that's okay, but I never really wanted kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was terrified of replaying that,
Mm-hmm.
and ending up being that dad that I ended up having at the end.
Yeah, raising another child in the same environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of decided, well, it'd just be easier not to have one.
Mm-hmm.
And then through those years, we were married 8 years before we had a kid.
Yeah.
And some of that was getting Amanda through school and in a career. That was our goal. And from my parents' situation, my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She raised the kids. And so when my dad split, or didn't split, but when they separated and then ended up taking his life, she had nothing built up, nothing to support her. And so it was important for me, regardless of what happens to Amanda and I, for her to be able to support her and whatever kids are there.
Did Amanda want kids earlier, or was she was she on the same page?
Yeah, she wanted to get through school. But if I would have been on board, I'm sure she would have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we tried for a year before we ended up getting pregnant. And so she was definitely game. I was the one kind of pumping the brakes on the whole thing. But so what I was getting at is through those years, I slowly kind of worked on that. Yeah. And I thought, and I'd listened to a lot of people and talked to a lot of people. And I realized that, and I love Justin Prince talks about it a ton right now, about being the one that kind of broke the cycle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I started deciding in other terms, not exactly Justin's terms, but well, I have the power to change this.
Yeah.
I don't have to be that same, the bad parts of my dad.
Yeah.
He had a lot of good qualities.
Yep.
But just that end bad.
So what do you think, gave you that perspective? Because I feel like we have so much in common. I grew up very similar, and same thing. My dad passed away, just drank too much. It was basically suicide. I knew eventually it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But for me, growing up, I always I knew since I've known Brandon, I always knew I was going to be successful. Just, I'm going to change it. So I guess my perspective was a little bit different. What do you think gave you that ability to change that perspective from going, I don't want to have a family because I might end up being my father, or I might end up raising them in the same environment? Where did that change? Where did you hear somebody? Did you read something? Did you listen to a podcast? Honestly, were you in therapy? Where did it change to where you realized one day, maybe it was your wife, that hey, I can be a different man. I can make different decisions, and I can build a different kind of family, and I can have a different trajectory. And if I change those things, then I want to have children to be able to raise in a great environment. Where did that happen for you?
Yeah, I think having a business and trying to grow a business helped because it gave me the perspective of like, I control the needle. And I listened to a lot of podcasts. I started getting into that when I was doing holsters. So I'd sit downstairs and build holsters for 4 hours and listen to 2 podcasts. And so having that influence of just being positive, and then knowing that there's no outside source that controls me or my reactions. Yeah. And I was very reactionary as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to give control of my emotions or my actions to anybody or any outside pressure or whatever that is. And so I really just started taking ownership towards everything I was doing and relationships I had. And my wife was a big part of it. I knew, really like my mom. My mom's a saint for everything she went through and everything she did. And I had the mentality growing up that, when I have kids, that I don't owe my parents anything, but I owe my kids everything.
Yeah.
But then going through some of those later years with my mom, I was like, dang, dude, like she has given up so much and been there for all of us. And she was the rock for 20 something years, 30 years. Right. But I think podcasts probably helped me a lot. Relationships really helped me a lot. Yeah. I had a Ron Stout, my best friend's dad. He taught me a lot about, processing things, thinking through things, and not being reactionary. And he taught it by example. We never had a conversation about it, but I just could see the differences between how I grew up and that, where things would happen and he'd almost just pause. And then he would have then he would tell you what he thinks.
So you kind of looked up to him at a young age.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Him and I, so when Alex ended up going to Wyotech for school, I would still call his dad and be like, what are you doing today? And he didn't really have a job. He just owned little things, owned property. If he had a job, he had an area in the industrial yard that they're excavating. So he had dump trucks and loaders and water trucks. And but every day he was just doing something different. And so I'd call him, what do you need help with?
Yeah.
And then one day I opened up to him about what I was going through at home. And ever since then, he would start calling me. What are you doing today? What are you doing today?
That's awesome.
And now I know I thought he was just like needing help, need another set of hands. And some days he did, but he was doing it more because he wanted to check in.
That's awesome.
See how things were going. And so he helped me through a lot just by example. He's passed away now. He had stage 4 lung cancer, but I owe a lot of who I am and what I was able to pivot in those years because of him.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think as you say those things, one of my favorite books is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I don't know if you ever read it.
I'm like halfway through it.
It's a tough read.
It is.
It's a tough read, but it's almost like reading the Bible. You got to study it. You can't just read it as a book. You've got to study it. But that's my biggest takeaway from that book is you can't control what happens to you, but you can control the way you respond to what happens to you. Right. And that response is everything, where this man who had a major impact on your life didn't have to say anything. He just had to be that example and made a huge impact. I think it's a great lesson for all of us, Yeah.
He for me, he was the epitome of the example of what you want to be. With his wife, with his kids, with his work. Yeah. And he was the guy, he's a stout. So it's a huge name here, right? Hurricane. He's a Hurricane Stouts. I swear it was every day he was helping someone with something. Yeah. Whether it was like he had property that had a camper on it and someone needed a place to stay and they were staying in there, or him going and pouring cement for a family that needed cement poured, or, the guy was just always doing something. Yeah. And so, I've never really connected the dots here, but I think that's probably some of the podcast too for me is I saw, he'd pull up to people on the side of the road and throw them $5.
Yeah. He would just what they were trying sacrifice to do. And
everything
serve.
He did, man.
I heard something this morning I thought was really good. It's so often in life we might think all give to charity when I get enough money, or I'll give my time when I have more time. But if we wait till the sacrifice is no longer a sacrifice, it's no longer a sacrifice.
Exactly.
I like
Right?
that.
So good.
And so we're supposed to sacrifice when it's time to sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why giving to charity before you make it big, or giving your time before you have the time.
Or investing. Yeah, when it doesn't feel like, you have the money to invest. Or, I think that what a great, where'd you hear that at?
A podcast.
Love that's
I was listening to this morning.
great. Yeah, it reminds me.
Well, I got it from the widow's mite, right? The widow puts in all she has. They were talking about that and how she didn't have it, but she gave it all. And
so good, dude. Yeah, I remember one time I was listening to Andy Frisella's podcast, and I grew up in a bad neighborhood, and so it was like you give somebody money, this dude's an alcoholic, he's gonna go buy alcohol, or someone can go buy crack, and people would ask money, especially we live in Vegas, always ask us for money. I'm like, no, I'm not going to give that guy money, until one day I heard Andy Frisella on a podcast, and he goes, it's not your job to determine what they're going to do with it.
Yep.
It's just your responsibility to do something good with what you've been blessed, not the response to it. So just serve, just bless somebody else, and then they choose what they're going to do with it or not.
Yeah.
But you can't control their actions, but you can control yours. And so what is your intention behind it? And I'm like, dang, it's such a good response. It changed my perspective on giving that guy $5 or whatever, where all I can do is an act of generosity.
Yep.
And then,
how often? I mean, I think all the time, is this a test for me right now? Am I gonna pass this test? This person's asking for money. So it's, I think about it all the time. Like, is God going, okay, Brandon, I'm going to give you an opportunity to be blessed here. Are you going to take advantage of it?
Yeah.
It's a hard thing. It really is. And it's something I think us as humans, we always have to remind ourselves of is, hey, when we do have the opportunity to serve, do we look at it as, hey, we're owed something? Or we had a conversation the other day, right? And it just makes me think about our conversation the other day. Is like, our job is to serve and just continue to do more and continue to, put forward in effort into things we've been blessed with, right? And that, it always turns out good when you act out of service versus act out of wanting something or holding or hoarding or whatever, right? Thank goodness for this guy who was just in his servant mentality where it changed your life. But I'm sure there's other people, if we open this up and say, hey, who else's life did he change? I'm sure it was a lot of people.
Yeah. And generations to come for your family. I mean,
Right.
I
was going to say two things. So another thing Ron taught me was just relationships.
Yeah.
He used to go into Dixie Diesel where they would work on the big diesel trucks, semis, loaders, and he knew all the guys there. And so I was rolling with him one day, and we end up going in there, and everyone's like, oh, Ron, what's going on? And it was funny because everyone just like puts their tools down, and they had like buckets and chairs and stools, and they all went and sat around this circle when he came in. And then they had like ice cream in a freezer, little ice cream bars. And so they went and got ice cream bars and passed them out to everyone. And then we just sat there for like 20 minutes and just talked. And he checked in with them and told stories, and they told jokes, and then we bailed.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, dude, don't you have something to do? You know? And I'm like, you're a busy guy. And we go get in the car, and I told him, I'm like, what was that all about? Like, why did you feel like you needed to go in there? Because we didn't need or do anything.
Yeah.
And he just said, dude, you got to understand, like some of these relationships that you're going to make, you never know. Like you never know if one of those guys just needed to sit down and talk. You never know. And it really, I remember it like it was yesterday, and this was 15 years ago, and I think like, and maybe that's why part of why I talk so much, but I just you never know. Someone needs to be seen. Someone needs to be heard. Someone needs to be talked to.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing I learned from him, and that's turned me into who I am today for sure. Networks and relationships to me, I mean, they are worth more than money. They're worth more than everything else to me.
Well, how often do we just need to slow down?
Yeah.
It's not easy to do when life's crazy.
Right.
Slow down, smell the roses, have the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's like a lot of generations. It's funny because as you get older, you realize like, am I old now? Because I think so. When I was young, I used to think,
know.
Then you get older. As like I live in a neighborhood, all my neighbors are old, Most of them are 70 or 80 years old. And it's funny because Kelsey and I were talking about we always live in neighborhoods where everybody's old. And she's like, why do we do that? I'm like, I just think we really respect the wisdom of an older generation because they have it figured out. A lot of times you listen to somebody who's been around for a while, and they can give you some wisdom in making those decisions. And I think as I get older too, that slow down phase is like, slow down. And you can't make an impact if you don't have good relationships, and you can't have good relationships if you're not willing to slow down and actually talk to somebody about, just life, or how can you help? How can you serve? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to be late to everything because like I'll just talk to someone.
Yeah.
And so like when I'm delivering safes or when I'm at the safe store, need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm usually sitting there chatting someone up and I'm like, oh dude, I got to get out of here. I'm already late.
But it's paid off, I can tell you, because dude, everybody around town that knows you loves you.
Oh yeah.
Everybody has incredible things to say. So it's obviously paid off.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen to everybody.
No.
No,
that's absolutely not.
Well, the other thing I wanted to touch on, Ed Milet. I mean, we mentioned Andy Frisella already. Ed Milet, they're partners in Arte. You guys know that. I'm a part of that coaching group, and so we went out to their live event in St. Louis just a month ago, and Ed talked about the story of his dad getting sober.
Yep.
If you guys have heard that, and if people haven't seen it, I'm not going to redo the whole things, but go watch it. It's a great story, and he's done it on other podcasts and told similar stories. But the thing that I got from that was his dad got sober, which helped him and all the growth in him. But who's the guy that helped his dad get sober, right? And he talks about, and he's Ed. His dad was Ed Milet, and this other guy's name was Ed. And he says like, he helped my dad, which was great, changed our family dynamic. He's like, but I've helped millions of people, all because this Ed helped my dad, sponsored my dad to get sober.
It's funny you say that, because there's actually a kid's Bible book that I read to my kids a lot, and that is the story. It's written by Andy Andrews. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a pretty big book. I'm sure if you look up Andy Andrews' children's book, and that's the whole philosophy, and he goes back to stories in the Bible and talks about how someone changed someone's life, and he goes, but where did they come from? Who changed their life? Who changed their life? Who changed their life? Who changed their life? Goes all the way back to the beginning, and they say, see, one little action you do can change for centuries, generations, right? Can change the lives of millions of people because you had just one act of kindness and you change someone's life.
Yeah.
Such a great concept, and it's things that sometimes we don't realize because we get caught up in our lives, our emotions, crap happens to us in life. But if we're reminded of these things constantly, then I think you do it more often. But it also, I think, is so good because that's really what makes a great community.
Yeah.
It's what makes a place special to live, raise kids. Are these concepts, and the more people that remember them and that are reminded of them, the more likely we are to have a great community. You know? We see all the craziness happen in the world today, and I think a lot of it's because people don't take time to get to know their neighbors a lot of times. You know?
Well, I think that goes the other way too, where it's like you need to be self-aware, because what's that one negative event that you could have with someone?
Yep.
And some of those are bound to happen, but being self-aware of your interactions with people is also important.
Well, we all mess up sometimes,
Right.
So I tell my son, I said, sorry goes a long ways.
Yeah.
If you're just humble enough to say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up, and you get rid of your ego and just admit you were wrong and just say sorry. None of us are perfect. None of us are always going to respond correctly. But a lot of times if you respond incorrectly, just tell someone, sorry, I apologize. I shouldn't have done it, and just, get rid of your ego for a minute and apologize. So I think that's a good point too, is that, like you talked about the story in your minds. And I think a lot of times we do that to ourselves. We'll play these stories of negative events. I think it's really good if we can do it for positive events in our lives. Sometimes people do it too much where they're still playing that one good game they had in high school.
Yeah.
They never achieve anything later on in life. But a lot of times people do it with negative things in their lives. Like, this is who I am. I can't change because, and if you can learn to change that story in your mind, then you can become something different, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of times we'll make mistakes or whatever, and we continue to play that over, and we feel guilty about it. And we have all this shame where, if you just get over it and stop playing that story in your mind and just say sorry, move on, and just change, that's the best thing you can do to get out of those situations, I think.
Yeah. Now you're successful in business too. So I want to know, how long
have you been in business, first of all?
So I've had multiple little businesses, right?
How long have you owned a business for?
The first one I started was, I think we're going on 15 years.
It's awesome. So how many business owners last 15 years in business?
Yeah, and that's the one I still have. That's the contract post office route.
Yeah. So, it is. Okay.
That's awesome.
So your parents, they were employees.
Right.
They weren't business owners. Are your brothers business owners?
So we've all owned something at some point, all of my siblings.
Okay.
My mom dabbled a little bit in like she did crafts, like handmade crafts. My grandpa's a cabinet guy, builder, always had tools around. And so my mom would do like craft shows a little bit. Like I said, she was a stay-at-home mom, so she kind of did what she could. But so Mike, my oldest brother, Mike, ex-military, did a tour in Iraq. He's a know-it-all construction guy. He's by trade, he's an electrician, but he can do anything. We're actually working on a drywalling job I've been helping him with a customer he met through me, but so he can do anything. He's owned a business before doing some of that handyman stuff, but I think it serves him better to have, and the military proved that, like a little more structure. And
I don't think everybody's built to be an entrepreneur.
100%,
for sure.
it's not. Yeah,
I mean, not everybody's willing to persevere and go through the crap. Some people, it's just that's how they're wired. It's okay.
Well, and so that's what he's doing now. Electrician stuff now. Adam is the one everyone knows around town. Adam Legg. He's a partner in Red Rock Properties. Red Rock real estate, property management, all that. So he's been business wise, well, really life wise, but business wise, like the example I keep chasing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's your older brother.
Right. So
how cool.
He's 4 years older. It's actually his birthday today.
Awesome.
I texted him today and was like, "Hey man, happy birthday. Thanks for always giving me something to chase." And with business, it's been that way. With family, it's been that way. His relationship with his wife, it's been that way. He's definitely a guy I think a lot of people in St. George look up to, but for me, for sure. And then Jason, in between Adam and I's Jason, he always jokes that he's the forgotten kid because he's the third kid. And him and Adam owned and operated 25 Main Cafe. That was in the middle of town, and then they sold it about a year ago. So he's kind of done the entrepreneur route also. And he just started working with Mike doing electrical stuff now. So like I've got some background, I've got some stuff. Adam's definitely the launch pad for me. I mean, he showed me how to set up an LLC. He showed me how to do books. He showed me how to file taxes. Like he's the one that showed me. He had the small businesses, the pest control businesses, until he ended up getting into what he's in now with Red Rock.
Yeah, he's crushing it.
Yeah, they're doing big things.
Yeah,
cool.
It's awesome.
So what were some of the initial businesses and the risks that you took initially? How were you feeling through that process? Was it scary? What
Always
failed?
scary.
What succeeded? How did you fail as much as you succeeded? I mean, did you succeed every time?
My first thing getting into it was I worked at a parts store. I was a manager at 18, and I just thought I could do things better. Like it sounds terrible to say out loud, but like I just thought I was better than the other people that worked there, and I had better ideas. I knew how to do it. I do it myself better than anyone. And then when I went from that, I started doing the post office routes with Adam. So he was doing that 3 days. I was doing it 3 days. And then I met the postmaster there. And then we had a good relationship as far as if I thought something was wrong, I'd go tell him. And we'd go sit down in his office and talk about it. And so he kind of helped me grow that way. But it made me realize that I'm not a great employee, because of that mindset that I had. And I went from that. Well, then we were talking marriage, my wife and I. So I ended up getting a job at the post office. So I stopped doing the contract route, was back to a W-2 employee. But it worked because that postmaster and I we were close and we understood each other. But it broke my body down. I ended up having back issues, shots in my back. I was 25. My back was wrecked. I like my 3 lower discs are all, but my 2 are gone. The third one's almost on its way out. And so I just thought it's funny. The story I tell is when I sat down with the postmaster, when I made regular. So if you make regular at the post office, you're handcuffed. It's about impossible to fire you. The only way you get out of there is if you quit. And you're unionized. So you're protected. You're guaranteed 40-hour weeks, all that stuff. But I remember sitting down there with the postmaster, and he's like, we're signing all the papers, and he says, "Congratulations, man, in 32 years, you're going to retire." And I'm like, 26,
He's got sick.
That's like a kick in the nuts, dude.
And it hit me, man. Like, just like you guys were saying, dude, it hit me. I was like, I'm not doing this for 30 more years, And I was like, I don't even think my body will let me, but my mentality won't. Like, I'm meant for more than this.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I'm big headed when I talk like that, but that was just my mentality. I was like, I'm not going to keep doing this.
Most ingenuity and most great businesses were built by the youth because of that reason.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's how I felt. So I even told him, I think I was like, I'm not sticking around for 30 years, and I went on for maybe another year or two. It got to where I was like taking painkillers in the mornings and I was taking muscle relaxers to go to bed at night. Mm-hmm. And I had done that for months and months and months. And
it's a dangerous path.
Yeah. And I mean, I would sit, so we had a split level house. And so I'd sit on the stairs to put my shoes and socks on in the mornings. And I couldn't bend over to put my shoes and socks on. Yeah. And literally, as humiliating as it was, I'd have to wake my wife up. She'd have to come down and put my shoes and socks on. And I was just like, I just can't keep doing this. But I just thought, man, get her through school, through school, And she was on her way of getting her master's in nursing. So she's a nurse practitioner now for trauma surgery and orthopedics here. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept thinking like, man, I just got to milk this, I just got to get it through. And about 6 months before she graduated, I just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. I just decided I was done. And I went and talked to my mom. I talked to Adam and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have anything lined up. I have this little holster thing that I started in my basement. So I can do that to get by. And Adam was like, well, dude, the kid that's been doing the contract route that you left just gave me 2 weeks. Like, do you want to go back to that? And I'd always split it. So I'd always done like 2 or 3 or 4 days. I'd never done the full 6 days. Mm-hmm. So I said, if I'm going to do it, I have to have all 6 days, like to financially make it work. And he's like, cool. He's like, if you want to start that in 2 weeks and go put your 2-week notice in. And so I went to the post office, talked to the postmaster. I was like crying. Mm-hmm. Like I respected the guy so much. I still do. I mean, we're still friends. I respected the guy so much. I was like in his office crying and I was just like, dude, I just don't think I can do it anymore. I've never quit anything in my life like this. And he just kept on saying, dude, he's like, it's fine, man. Like, I don't want to cripple you. I don't want to cripple you. You're doing the right thing. And so I ended up quitting, which is funny. So I did my 2 weeks. I'd always joked about the day I quit the post office, I'm going to flip everyone, like do double birds out the door. Right. And so that Friday I'm like, see ya bitches, like roll out the door. Yeah. And then Saturday I showed back up and did the other route. So I didn't feel like quitting.
That reminds me of that movie where the dude gets kicked off the plane or whatever. And then he cusses everybody out. And then the doors closed. He's like, did you not just hear my speech? I don't know what movie that is. It's hilarious. You got to let me off this plane. I just cussed everyone out. Just like, no, the plane doors closed.
Yeah, so it was like Saturday I was back there doing the contract route. And I mean, to this, I still own it today.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I did that 6 days a week for pretty much like 4 straight years.
So it was scary. It was
terrifying, man. You couldn't be sick. You couldn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And with back problems, it was a risk I was taking. And I went 3 years, every 6 days a week for 3 straight years.
Dang. Yeah, no time off.
There was no one to do it.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah.
And you have to be there every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. Yeah, I remember early on in my career when we were actually getting ready to move from Boise to Vegas, I had called one of my mentors that I really looked up to. And I was just telling him I was thinking about moving. And he said, Jeff, just because you have this business and you're making money, he says a true entrepreneur is somebody who's willing to risk everything they have for the potential to go get more. He goes, if not, you're basically just a high-paid employee. You're not willing to risk anything. You're not willing to take any risk. He goes, that's not an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I just remember thinking, like, hung up the phone. I'm like, we got to do it. I was scared. I was scared to move. Shoot, I was scared to move from St. George to Boise. If it wasn't for Kelsey, I probably never would have done it. But it's just, that's what an entrepreneur has to do, right? At some point, you've got to be willing to take a risk that most people aren't willing to take. And that's the reason you get the opportunity that most people don't have.
Yep.
And that's why everybody calls it luck.
Right.
You got lucky. Well, I took a risk you weren't willing to take.
That's people talk about luck, and I say, well, it tends to be the people that take risks and work harder tend to be more lucky.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
I'm like, you define it how you want.
And there is some luck involved, right? There is some luck involved because it doesn't always work out. Because sometimes you take that risk and you fall flat on your face, and that's why you got to be willing to get up and go again. But you're right. You have to be willing to take the risk in order to take that opportunity. And if it works out, there was some luck involved.
Yeah.
But you had to be willing to take the risk to have the luck.
Well, and I don't know if I answered your question, but I went through a couple I did like a mobile oil change business that failed. I did we were riding razors and 4-wheelers and stuff a lot. And when you're driving by, like when you're only going down the road that goes to the 4-wheeler people, everyone starts waving at each other, right? And so I was like, dude, let's start like a clothing brand that, everyone that knows. So when you pass someone in Walmart and they have Rider Nation on their shirt, you're like, oh, what's up, dude? Rider Nation, Yeah. And so we started this little clothing brand, Rider Nation. We got like a little screen printer, and we were doing it. And we sponsored a couple like softball teams with it. And it just like never, that's a hard industry, right? But it just like never really caught on. And so we folded that up and, I'm sure I'm missing a couple other things. It was just.
Then you got into the safe business a couple years later.
Yeah. So I did holsters. I'd done holsters for now I've done it 12 years.
Okay.
And that just made me the relationships getting into the safe business. And I would wake up in the morning, I'd go do the mail contract. I would come back. I would, like we were talking before, I don't know if that got on here or not, but I would drive around, pick up everybody's guns. I'd meet them in parking lots. I'd meet them wherever. I'd pick up their guns. I'd go back home and I would make holsters for 4 or 5 hours. And then I'd go meet the people back that night.
It's good service right there, man.
Back.
That's awesome.
And and then it got to where like rowdies were aware of me. And so I started making friends at Rowdy's Range. And then I was like, hey, do you guys care if people just drop guns off here? So like, I'm not meeting them in the back of Walmart, And so then we kind of made like a pickup drop off area there and started running that. But
awesome.
Yeah. I was.
And then did you get a storefront for that? And that's kind of how you ended up with safes, or how'd you get into the safe business?
Yeah. So the manager at the time, at Rowdy's, it was his idea to do a safe store. And him and I went to lunch one day and I'm like, dude, just do it. Like, yeah, dude, it's scary, but you're just going to have to jump in and do it if it's something you want to do. And he talked about it a lot. So I said, well, how can I help you get into it? Like, is there anything I can, like, other than just like a mentorship thing, And he said, well, I need someone that's done business before. And I was like, look, everyone that starts business for the first time has never done business. Like, so you need to jump.
Great piece of advice, dude.
But like, and I said, dude, I'm here if you need me. And I'm not even like guru business guy, but like maybe there's a few potholes I can help you dodge. And long story short, we ended up just going in together. Yeah. And I funded it. I personally guaranteed everything. I did a lot of it. And the commitment was like, he would run the store and get the brands and I would fund it and get us a place. And then it just turned out to be more work for me and I already had holsters and at that time I had 2 mailer outs. And so I was like, I don't have time to be at the store every day. And then about 9 months had gone by and we had our struggles back and forth. And so he ended up, he was trying to buy me out for a few months and he ended up just basically saying, why don't you just buy me out for $1 and I'll walk. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. Like that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was we'd get profitable. We'd get some couple of year or two behind us and then he'd buy me out, you know, and then I'd just be like, thanks, man. I'm glad this is all working out. And so that whole part was hard for me. And again, dude, like the relationship like tore me up, and I mean, it got to where the only communication was through emails. And I mean, our desks were next to each other, And so anyway, so I ended up mailing him a check for $1 and put a 51-cent stamp on it, and mailed him a check. And he's doing his own thing now. And I shut the store down. So we were on the boulevard, right off the boulevard. I shut the store down, put it all in the storage unit, and didn't know what I was going to do. And I thought like holsters is still doing good. I'll just keep doing that. And I sold, a couple safes here and there. Our dealer name was still on the websites of the manufacturers. So I'd still have people call us and wanted product. And like Fort Knox is really good. They would push stuff to me and say like, hey, can you go install this? Or even if like they sold it, he would want me to do the local stuff. So they kind of kept things going. And then right when COVID was hitting, I had always wanted to get the store open again. I just didn't have the time. I had ended up hiring out both of my contract post office routes. So I was like, hey, I've got time now. And so I started kind of just toying with the idea COVID hits 2020. We're in like February of 2020. And I'm like, maybe this is stupid. Like, who knows what's going to happen? People are falling over dead in China,
Another
right?
risk.
Whatever it was. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm just going to keep shopping storefronts. And if I find something, I'll know.
Yeah.
And where I am now on Sunset, right there by Taco Bell, across the street, there's a bunch of like storage unit areas. There's like
From a
Red Rock
boxing gym was.
spas. Yeah. And so I had found a place in there, but they're like a very, very small office and a big warehouse.
Yep.
And I wanted the opposite. And so I kind of negotiated with them for a little bit, and it's not what I wanted, but I was like, it'll work. And as I was driving over there to sign the papers across the street where I am now, there was a for sale or a for lease sign. And so I went in and got the lady's number and called her, and I said, hey, I'm actually going to sign this other deal, but I want to look at yours first. And she's like, oh, they just FedExed the key to me. If you want to come grab the key. So I drove over there, grabbed the key, opened it, walked through it. And I was like, this is exactly what I want. Like, have the full showroom, the workspace in the back. I'll just turn into the holster area, have a little bit of storage. And so I went back to her. The problem is everything's way more than I could afford, you know, and that little storage unit thing was about the top of my, you know, what I budgeted. So I went back to her and just said, hey, it's perfect. I don't even want to insult you with what I could pay. And she's like, well, where are you at? So I told her where I was at. She's like, let me call the building owner. He's pretty cool. And so she calls the building owner, and they ended up upping me like $100.
Wow.
And she's like, can you do that? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, when can you move in? And so it was the end of March. And I was like, I can move in April 1st.
Yeah.
And she's like, cool, let's sign a contract.
Awesome.
And I was like, for 1 year? She's like, for 1 year. I'm like, let's do it.
Heck yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, when you are, when you know what you want to do
Yeah.
and you're ready to make it happen, doors open up. When you're out looking, you get creative. There's some energy. I swear, man.
Well, you notice things, right? Your mind
just
opens
work
up.
out. Yeah.
To rather than saying, hey, this won't work because you could have just drove over there, signed it, whatever. It really wasn't what you wanted, but you were looking for a way to make it happen and found it, right? Yeah, I think that happens with everything.
Oh, man. I can look back on my life and getting my financial business going, looking for an office and just how things worked out. So I look back, I go, holy cow, how did that even work?
Business plans don't work.
No.
That's why they don't work.
They don't
say,
work.
well, business plan. Well, we do it, but it isn't going to work because there's no way, right? Looking backwards is easy to say, oh, that's how. But trying to design that forward is like dang near impossible.
You just got to move forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make the call when it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? And just, make calls, dude. I mean, because think about it. April 1st of 2020, dude, everybody thought the world was going to end.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, no one knew, right? It was weird. I was like, I think it's all fake, but it's still weird.
I put an offer on our house, dude, on April 15th.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the day I put an offer on. And like if the world does end, so what? I mean, we might as well buy something at the end, you know? Like,
right.
And it turned out, dude, we crushed it. But it was like just taking that risk. And I think dude, so many people are scared to take those risks. It's cool for me to hear you talk about, because every business that you have right now, all of them were kind of a risk.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, oh man, I got to try, right? I got to move forward. And some of them have failed. Some have been successful, but 15 years later, you've built an incredible business. You've got incredible relationships. You got a great family. Just talking about your dream home that you drew. And dude, it's cool to hear. And especially where you started and how you grew up, man.
Yeah, that's how I've always felt with you too. And we tried to do this before, and I think my schedule didn't match up to be on the podcast. But both of you guys, like I've had you on mine, both of you guys, I'm like, you guys need to start your own type of thing. And so when you guys were launching this, I was jacked, just because you guys have so much experience and leadership. And I mean, look at you guys, you're freaking fit, you're jacked, you guys are doing big things. I
appreciate
you're
that,
definitely someone I think everyone should have access to and look up to. And so that's what this is. It gives everyone access, little glimpse into your life and those nuggets that you guys have learned.
Yeah.
I was just hoping I wasn't going to have to do like burpees or like a cold plunge.
That's after, dude. You didn't bring a swimsuit, though, so you're just going to have to do it in your underwear.
Yeah, it's going to go skinny dip.
You ain't got a swimsuit that'll fit me, so you're going to sew 2 of them together.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, it'll work.
That's funny. That's after. Yeah, we got to make sure you can talk, and then afterwards
we actually should make that a thing. Hey, we're doing a cold plunge when you come, so just be ready for that.
For sure.
No, dude,
no, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you.
No, I mean it. I didn't know you really well before we had you on the podcast. Like Brandon and I we've crossed paths a few times. And like when Jeff was on, he just blew me away. I was like, dude, people need to figure out how to get around this guy.
Yeah, thank you, man.
And I mean, that's what the podcast has been for me. That's what's cool about it. You know, people ask, how did you start this? And I'm like, it's not even about me, even though it's named after me.
Yep.
It's about other people.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, we're just setting the platform for people to come on and talk. And
you've done a good job with it. I mean, you've had a lot of really interesting and great people on, you know,
and the whole thing's just been organic. Like we've been lucky, right? Like we've been lucky to have, you know, the vets and the mental health people and the business people and the money people and it's just been
the authors,
right.
I mean, yep.
And I mean, it's gone. I don't even know how to word it. Like there's more nuggets in that podcast than I ever thought there would be.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't know if we were going to go 2 weeks and punt. Like I was hoping not, because I mean, really, when Mallory and I started, Mallory and Blake with Blueform, they were betting on that I was going to follow through.
Yeah.
And I was betting on that they were going to stick it out. You know, so we kind of both held each other accountable and moved forward.
Yeah.
I mean, because Mallory kind of quit the gig she was doing to come and build the studio and do what she was doing with me. And so I think we felt accountable to each other, like, hey, well, I have to keep doing this.
Sure.
And I mean, then it's turned into what it is. But the biggest thing on that was just consistency. The first year we didn't miss one weekend. And like, I don't know of anything that I've done for a year and didn't miss 1 week, right?
That's awesome.
Like having that consistency of it is really what made it what it was.
Isn't it cool too? Every single human being out there has a story.
Yeah,
They do.
And they've got something in their story that's interesting, impactful,
And the matters.
great lessons.
I think I used to have a talk that I gave about this. Everybody's story matters. You just have to do something that gets enough people's attention to put you in a place you can actually tell your story.
Yeah.
there you go.
You know, and
Exactly.
it's like, I mean, you have to, but everybody's story does matters. And there's so many, I mean, you know, it's even like Proverbs. There's so many people that you can get advice from, like what not to do. Like, hey, if you do this, it's going to screw up your life. See, you know, if you do this, it's going to make your life incredible. See, so I think you can learn from everybody. It always reminds me of that story you told me about Merton in his office when the guy came out complaining about no paper towels. You know, what kind of operation is this? That's why Brandon's successful, right?
He was so mad. He goes and uses the bathroom in this professional financial services office, right? And he was mad, because there were no paper towels left. He's like, what kind of operation is this? Yeah. And Brendan's like, what he should have been thinking is if you're this successful with no paper towels, how much more successful you're going to be if you have paper towels. That was his attitude.
Yeah, that thinking is awesome, you know, because it really is the truth, right? You can learn from everybody, but his ability to turn around.
Oh, he was the master at that.
Yeah, right? Someone get a flat tire, we're supposed to recruit the mechanic.
Like he went into Chris Howard's office one time, and Chris Howard, his op meeting was on plastic, outdoor chairs, right? And Brendan walks in and goes, this guy's making $30,000 a month and he has plastic chairs in his office. I'm going to go up to Salt Lake and I'm going to have real chairs and I'm going to make more money. Like the chairs mattered, right? But you get the point.
Yeah.
Well, I know the chairs don't matter because I was wondering, when do we get like a comfy one like Brandon?
I know. Well,
What's that about?
Sorry. Right. We need to be more
figured
universal.
Jeff just likes to be uncomfortable because he likes to grow.
Yeah,
so he's got this uncomfortable chair.
They are a little rough. Yeah, you guys we could have got you one of these soft ones.
He just gives me this one because, you know, I'm always leaning back in him so that I don't break his chair.
Oh, yeah. Well, dude, thanks for being on today. I know we've went a little over time, but it's been a really, really good discussion today, and it's been fun.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me on. I like I said, I always tell people I'm just a dude from D-Town. You know, like I'm no one special. But at the same time, I mean, if I can do what we've done, I think anybody can. Yeah. Like I barely graduated high school. Yeah. You know, I stayed consistent. I worked hard. I didn't let outsource. You know, I didn't let things control me. I didn't let other people's emotions, what other people thought. I didn't let any of that control me, and I just keep pushing.
Yeah.
You know.
So awesome.
Man.
What
Proud
a
of you,
story.
dude.
What a story. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. Congratulations on your success so far. And you're on your way to much bigger things as well. So
I appreciate it.
it's
Thank you,
exciting to
guys.
see that. So
You bet,
appreciate
man.
it.
Cool.
Cool.